it's me. I have a bad idea. Would you like to bad idea with me? Yeah, that's all I got. Hello guys, it's Leanne and welcome to the start of a new vlog. Or should I say, welcome to the start of yet another new vlog series. And well, clearly I was super enthusiastic, like very hyped to begin my 60% diaries. This vlog project is a little bit less labour of love and more just like a labour of labour. Loma Faith would have stuff to say about this, you know? Okay. Whoa, can do this! Welcome to the vlog series where I read all of the oldest books on my shelves and question the past decisions of Leanne and probably put myself into a reading slump. Do you know what? There's work to be done and there's miners in my blood. So, but I don't know. Scottish ancestors help me. Is that a street sweeper? Are you coming to take away my trash books? Alas, he has abandoned us. Guess I'm just gonna have to read my trash books. You guys know that on my 2024 bingo board from hell, I am trying to address all of the various issues that I found last year with my reading. And one of the biggest issues that I found last year was that I have an abundance of TBR veterans on my shelves. That's how, Leanne, you have got rid of so many books recently. This is true. I have unhauled 1/3 of my entire library. And in that unhaul, there were a lot of TBR veterans which just didn't make the cut. And I feel like I've done the work when it comes to unhauls. I feel like I'm there now. I don't really hesitate. If a book is not working for me, it just... What's that sound effect? That was the sound of me launching a book out of my library at top speed with no packaging. So yeah, I don't have an issue with unhauling books that I'm genuinely not interested in, but my friends, I do have an issue with TBR veterans. Books that have survived multiple culls. Books which in some cases I have picked up multiple times and just never got to. And those TBR veterans aren't just standalone books. Sometimes they're first books in series, sometimes they're the 15th book in a series. But for whatever reason, they're just sitting on my shelves. And of course, because of this, some of them do also straddle that line into like rainy day books. Books that I'm just like waiting for the perfect time to pick up. But for the most part, these TBR veterans aren't rainy day books. They're books that I'm intimidated by. Or books that I'm really sure, like absolutely positively sure that I'm gonna love, but which I feel a huge amount of pressure behind. So here's how this series is going to work. In this episode, I am going to go around my shelves and I am going to take note of every single TBR veteran that I find. What is that sound? Not accountability, no. That sound is the stampeding noise of the consequences of our actions. And once I have compiled this list of TBR veterans, I'm going to put them on a spreadsheet and I'm going to try and work out exactly how long they've been in my library for. Then I'm going to come to you guys, I'm going to show you some data and we're going to work out a system for picking the books that I am going to read in these vlogs. And by a system I mean a process more exacting than just me going because that's also probably going to happen at some point. Okay, let's go. Okay, listen, I'm being honest here. I know that there's probably a better way of doing this than like literally walking around my shelves and writing down the books, but owing to an extreme case of like, I don't really want to do the work today, I don't really want to do the work today, or ever, this is what I've got, okay? This is what we are going with. Because if I have to put approximately 1.2 more seconds of thought into this, I'm just going to abandon it entirely. Alright, so as the bin men come to take my trash, so too I shall be taking note of my trash. Here we go. I saw you. Okay, I'm only just on the second shelf and I've already found 8. And this is just like the non-fiction and true crime section. Okay, this is fine. Other sections will be smaller. It's fine. Up there, I can see you smiling over a different planet. I still can't understand it. Never seen anything like it before. Oh, I see you when I'm sleeping. Show me what you're seeking. Up all day, we were up all night. Good day, my friends, how the devil are you? How are you doing? It's a few days later. I'm not particularly surprised by this fact. The going around and writing down of all of the oldest books on my TBR was kind of a little bit of a slap in the face, and it took me a little bit longer to organise this spreadsheet than I thought it was going to, because I wasn't sure what information or what categories I wanted on it and what would be most useful. So I am going to show it to you now. Okay, so here it is. Here's the spreadsheet in all of its dubious glory. As you can see here, what we have is the book title, the author, whether it is part of a standalone or a series, how many pages it is, what genre it is, how old I approximate that it is, how bad I feel about it, and then a column at the end which is just a great big fat no, because that column is, have you read it yet? That column is there for satisfaction purposes, so that after I have read it I may check it off, give it a little thumbs up and say it can go now. So as you can see, this spreadsheet is currently organised by genre, and that is simply because that is the order in which I wrote these books down. So you will be able to tell that we have quite a lot of non-fiction, a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of urban fantasy, a little bit of fantasy, a lot, for some reason, of thrillers, some literary fiction, and a ton of horror. And this is one of the reasons that I wanted to put this all down on a spreadsheet, because if you had asked me what the oldest books in my collection would look like and what genres they would fall into, I would absolutely never, under any circumstances, have said literary fiction and horror would have had the most on this spreadsheet. There are also, the eagle-eyed amongst you will have noticed, 61 books on this spreadsheet, which is a little under what I have currently read this year. So I am under absolutely no illusions that I am going to get through this entire list in 2024. There's a chance that we'll be able to knock off a big chunk of these, especially because, as you're about to see, some of them are on the shorter end of the spectrum, because those are classically the books that I'm most afraid of. But I think it's safe to say there's no chance that we're going to finish all of these this year. So speaking of pages, let us organise this sheet by pages. So first up, we do have one graphic novel here, but then the next books that we have after that are Picnic at Hanging Rock, a thriller, Oh Caledonia, horror, some Joan Didion in there, some memoirs. At the bottom of this list, however, we have got a middle grade. We've got Inkheart. Oh, that is not literary fiction, my lovely. That is most definitely fantasy. So we have Inkheart, and we have Master of Sorrows, which is also fantasy. Queen of the Tearling, also fantasy. Six of Crows, also fantasy. We're seeing a sort of pattern here. And this is the reason, I think, why there aren't as many fantasy books or urban fantasy books on this list as there are other genres. And that is because those tend to be on the chunky side, and I tend to gravitate more towards big long books than I do tiny little books. However, you will now notice that I have added a column which is, how old is it? So I am not going to go back through every single online order I have ever made, and some of these were purchased from indie bookshops, so I would have no way to kind of work out where they came from. I only started tracking my acquisitions in 2023, and so this column is based entirely on, in my brain, how old do I approximate this as. I have looked up a few of them because a few of them are hardbacks that I knew that I got as soon as they came out. You will also be able to see that this drop down does go up to 7 to 8 years, but I am glad to say that I found nothing that old on my shelves, and that's because the unhauls that I've been doing recently have been like fairly chunky. So let's sort this column by how old they are and have a look. I'm not surprised about this result, so the majority here are 1 to 2 years old. That being said, I am a little bit more surprised that there aren't more things in the 3 to 4 year column, because as you can see there is quite a lot in the 5 to 6 years. Oh, I lied. There is one 7 to 8 year, and that's Queen of the Tearling. So I'm quite surprised that more of these aren't 3 to 4 years and that there are so many 5 to 6 years. But hey ho, that's the way the cookie does crumble, which finally brings me to this column, and this column is, how bad do I feel about it? And the handy dandy way that I have organised this is in levels. Level 1 being, I don't feel that bad about it. It's fine. It's annoying that it's a TBR veteran, but I'm not like shedding tears about it. Level 2 is, I might have shed a few tears about it. Level 2 is, it has probably been on on a TBR at some point or another and it's fallen off the TBR and I've just never mentioned it again. And then there's level 3. Level 3 is I'm a horrible person. Level 3 is why the hell is this book still in my house? Level 3 is I have put this book on multiple TBRs and I have told you, I have sat there and I have lied to your face and I have been like, I am going to read this, and I have not done the thing. So there are a ton of different ways that we could approach this project. So I am making the executive decision that we are going to start with the book that I feel the absolute worst about not having read on this spreadsheet, and that is My Dark Vanessa. My Dark Vanessa has only been on my shelf for 1 to 2 years. It came out in 2020 and I do have a hardback of it, but I did not purchase this the minute that it came out because I was terrified of the hype. But this book, my guys, this book has been on so many TBRs. Every time I mention it, I get a flood of people in the comments who are like, you're gonna love that. That was my favourite book of the year. It's really, really hard to read, but I promise it's gonna be fine. And every single time I've gone, oh, everybody's really excited about this, aren't they? I think I will not read that, and it has promptly gone to the end of the TBR pile. So the only things that I remember about the synopsis of this one is that it is about a woman who, when she was in her teens, had what she perceived as an affair with, I think, her English teacher. And now, years and years later, when the Me Too movement has happened, she is forced to look at the relationship that she had with her teacher and kind of reframe it. Which again, sounds right up my alley, right? Like, you could pick this off a shelf and be like, that's a Leanne book, which is why I bought it. But I have not read it. That's how we're going to be starting this vlog. We're going to be starting it with this book. I don't think it could have started with any other book. Let's go. Hello my friends, you are weirdly perched on my desk because I'm on sprints right now and there is not a square inch of this desk that I can actually put my camera on. Yeah, so like I say, I'm on sprints right now with Becca and it is day 2 of me reading this book. As of right now, I am here. I am officially just a little tiny bit over halfway in this book and I have decided that I am going to DNF it. Fortunately, yeah, I'm not loving this. Fundamentally, this book does exactly what it says on the tin. It is a book about the Me Too movement. It is a book about a girl who at 15 was sexually abused by her 35-year-old teacher and who through the course of this book, years and years later, as a 30-odd-year-old person herself, is now being faced with realizing that what happened between them was not okay. And when the book begins, you kind of get the impression that Vanessa already sort of knows that this wasn't okay. And what you go on through the course of the book is like back and forth sections where you are living the experience of this happening and exactly what happened to her. And in the present, you are seeing the Me Too movement happen and then girls who have also been abused by the same teacher start to come forward in the wake of it. First of all, removing the subject of this book entirely from the discussion, the writing for me is just whatever. There are some descriptions in here that are clearly like reaching for beautiful descriptions that are going to stick in your memory, but apart from the really sort of middling whatever description of him likening her hair to autumn leaves, which is why I assume that we have got like her braid and stuff on the cover, apart from that there is really nothing in here that makes me wow. It's very utilitarian writing to me. It's just kind of getting through the subject matter. There's nothing making me want to pick it up. And at first I actually was thinking to myself, oh, like, well, it's just quite simplistic writing, so I'll fly through this. And I mean, I've been listening to this one while I'm reading along, and I have the audiobook narrator on 3 times speed because she is so slow. But then when the spinner on my sprints was like, change book from this, I was like, oh no, I need to pick it up again. And that was when I knew. This is my point when I say that I need to stop reading books that are just going to be 3 stars or 3.5 stars, because I know it's not going to get any better. I'm not going to like it any more than I am right now. I'm never going to rate it any more highly than I am right now. But I continue on with it because I'm like, well, I'm so far into it anyway. That is still another like 3 hours or something that I can be spending on another book. The second reason is because I have read a lot of true crime, a lot of which are memoirs that are written in words that are way more beautiful and emotive than this book and are actually real stories. I think this one suffers a lot for me. Maybe if I had read this one immediately when it came out and it was the next new thing, I would have been more compelled by it. But unfortunately, I missed that boat for a variety of different reasons. And quite honestly, I don't even know if I would have liked it then. And then lastly, at the extreme risk of oversharing, there were some situations in this book, not between Vanessa and her teacher, but between Vanessa and her family and Vanessa and the people in power who were supposed to believe her and who did not support her, which were obviously meant to be problematic and obviously meant to expound the idea that women are not believed, but which, reading them in so much detail and in the kind of like real time of this book, were like so triggery to me. And again, we've discussed this before, I'm generally not triggered a lot by things like that in books, and usually I'm totally fine, but there's something very specific in the writing of this book which is making me deeply uncomfortable and like a level of myself that I haven't been in a long time, and I just don't really want to engage with that for the sake of a book that's like 3 or 3.5 stars and is not going to change my world in any way. So it's like after 10 now and we're in the last few minutes of our last sprint, so I will have to wait and pick the next book that I am going to read tomorrow, but I'm still not entirely decided on the method. Don't know whether I'm going to pick another one that I feel really, really badly about, or another one that's been on and off TBRs like a yo-yo. We shall see, because I guess you'll know in the next clip. Alright. So, I was going to bring you back to my spreadsheet. I was going to rifle through all of the titles. I was going to choose with you. Then yesterday I was at a hospital appointment that I really didn't want to be at, and I forgot on the way out of the door to grab my book. And so I was sitting there like, oh no, because not only did I not have my book, but I didn't have my headphones, so I couldn't just like tune into music or whatever. So what I decided to do was get the spreadsheet up on my phone and browse my library app and see whether my library had any of the books available instantly. I decided to start with those level 3 books, the books that I feel the worst about. And the book that I settled on is definitely one that I feel bad about. Unlike My Dark Vanessa, which has been on and off and on and off TBRs for like months and months and months, and I just couldn't make myself pick up, this one has conversely been on my shelves for years, and I think it's maybe featured on one TBR, but otherwise it's just kind of sat there looking at me in hardback pre-order form, making me sweat. The book that I have picked is The Paragon Hotel by Lindsay Fay. Now, if you've been around my channel for a while, you will know that one of my favourite books of all time is Jane Steele by Lindsay Fay, which is a serial killer Jane Eyre retelling essentially. Of course, once I read that and I discovered that Lindsay Fay had another book coming out, I was like, well, I want that, and I got it. Let's see when I got it, shall we? Let's see. 2019. That's when I got it. I've never looked at it again. I have no excuse. I don't know what to tell you. What is this about? Good question, because I didn't remember when I pulled it off the shelf. This is set in the 1920s between Oregon and New York, and we are following Alice Nobody Jones, who has turned up in the city with a bag of money and no safe place to be. The thing is, nobody needs to have somewhere to go. She needs to have somewhere to hide and pretty urgently because the money that she has is tied in with the mafia, and in short, she shouldn't have it. I'm guessing that was probably another beat of hesitation for me of picking up this one off my shelf because I am not a mafia stories fan. I really could not care less about the mafia or any kind of like really organised crime like that in books. However, the synopsis then says she befriends Max, a black Pullman porter who reminds her achingly of home and who saves Alice by leading her to the Paragon Hotel. Her unlikely sanctuary turns out to be an all-black hotel in a Jim Crow city, and its lodgers seem unduly terrified of a white woman on the premises. It then goes on to list a bunch of the quirky residents that she meets in the hotel and says the Ku Klux Klan has arrived in Portland in fearful numbers, burning crosses, electing officials, infiltrating newspapers and brutalising blacks, and only Alice and her new Paragon family are searching for a missing mulatto child who has mysteriously vanished into the woods. In Jane Steele, Lindsay Faye did an absolutely amazing job of making a all-white cast so diverse. The Mr. Thornton character in that book has spent years and years of fighting abroad in India, and he has brought his entire established household back with him. So there are so many characters in that book who practice their religion and like openly instruct Jane in their way of life. But that said, just because I love Jane Steele so much doesn't mean that this one gets a free pass, and I will be just as critical about it as I would be about any other book. I will report back on the next book that I feel rotten about from my TBR.
She's somewhere in the sky. I'm hoping that I won't get left behind. If you leave me a sign, I won't gotta think it twice. On a different planet, I still can't understand it. Never seen anything like it before. Oh, I see you when I'm sleeping. Show me what you're seeking. Up all day, we're up all night. There's no such thing as time.
Well, my dudes, my friends, those who are hanging in there with me throughout this vlog. So a jump scare is me. I'm the jump scare. As you can see, I am no longer in my own home. I am in the library of the wonderful Becca from Becca and the Books. While Becca is in San Diego, I am babysitting my furry niece and nephew, both of whom I would show you except for the fact that it's 3 AM and both of them are tucked up in bed as all children should be at this time of night. Yes, apparently even the joy of Becca's house cannot tamper my insomnia. And I have 2 updates for you, neither of them favourable. I'm starting to have a little bit of concern for the way that this vlog is going. I have DNF'd at the Paragon Hotel by Lindsay Faye, which is depressing for a couple of reasons. The first of them being, of course, Lindsay Faye. This book was so incredibly different that it now makes me feel like I shouldn't pick up any other books that she has written. Granted, it has been a little while since she brought something new out, but she does have another couple of books in her backlist that I was interested in trying out. But from researching them, they do seem to be much more along the tone and the plot line of Paragon Hotel than they are Jane Steele. It's also depressing from the point of view that, of course, that makes 2 DNF'd books for this vlog, and spoiler alert, it is book 2 of 3 that I've DNF'd for this vlog. I have another one to tell you about. There were so many things that just didn't work for me in Paragon Hotel. I think fundamentally the mob thing is just never going to be my thing. I genuinely could not care less about the mob or their motivations or their internal politics. There's nothing particularly like sexy or appealing for me in that kind of threat of constant danger. In addition to that, although in Jane Steele the characters absolutely leapt off the page from the first word, in Paragon Hotel I very much felt like Lindsay Faye went in with like the archetype of a few different types of characters, and she was kind of like fleshing them out as she went along. I could see her putting all of the little building pieces in. It didn't seem seamless or flawless for me. And while it would be fair to say that in Jane Steele you definitely can feel the authorial voice, you can sort of feel Lindsay Faye moving the chess pieces around, it was in a very joyful way, whereas in this one I could see her laying in scenes that were definitely connecting pieces for later on in the book. From a technical point of view, I suppose it was a little bit interesting, but not enough. And lastly, the thing that I was worried about, which was seeing black characters with a potential white saviour involved did kind of feel like it was one of the roads that we were going down. Can't honestly say that that is how the novel ends up, but it felt like there was a good chance that that could be an inevitable destination, and so I just noped my way out. Which brings me to the third DNF of this vlog. After I DNF'd those two fairly chunky thrillers, I kind of thought to myself, do you know what? I want an easy win. Something that I can say, hey, I've read and it was quite good. But unfortunately, I can't tell you that. I can't say to you that I have read this and it was quite good because I really didn't like it. The book that I am talking about is the only graphic novel on this list. It is the first volume of Safe Sex. As I've told you guys before, I'm not really investing in graphic novels at this particular moment. Where I am right now in my reading and collecting life, I blast through graphic novels so quickly that I almost can't justify the cost of them. But when I unhauled all of my other volume ones that had just been okay, there was this one unread volume left on my shelf, which I thought, if this turns out to be good, I will genuinely quite happily pay for the rest of this series. But unfortunately, it did not end up being good for me. The premise of this graphic novel is that we're in kind of an apocalyptic world where a new world order has taken over and has legislated all of the sex and physical expressions of need and passion and love. And there is an underground group of sex workers who are attempting to service people as a lifeline, which is a concept that I just thought was so interesting, and genuinely it is. It is very interesting, but just not interesting enough to keep me reading. There were some very, very obvious twists and turns in this one that I did feel like were playing a little bit too much on A Handmaid's Tale and a few other quite notable dystopian novels. Add to that the fact that in this one volume we meet an abundant amount of characters, far too many characters for one volume of a graphic novel. It just became muddled and confusing, and I wasn't really invested in anybody. The writing was fun in places, but obviously this is a graphic novel, so for me the dialogue needs to be absolutely popping off the page, and it just wasn't. Fortunately, on top of all that, the art just really wasn't for me. It was giving me mid-2000s Marvel with a really gritty sort of the deepest, darkest volumes of Batman. And don't get me wrong, that cross-section might be some of your sweet spots, but it's definitely not mine. So unfortunately, this graphic novel has also gone. I know that 2 novels in a graphic novel is totally fine for the first episode of a TBR Veterans Challenge, but my brain says there was a theme emerging, and that theme was thrillers that had been on my shelf for a really long time. So I looked at my spreadsheet and I discovered that I have these thrillers left over. And not gonna lie, a little part of my brain was like, you could just read all of them for this vlog. I have so many projects on the go and so many fun things that I want to film while I've got access to Becca's library that I just don't have time to read every single book on that list. And so just before I travelled down here, I popped everything that I had left over on my spreadsheet into a poll for my patrons, and they picked this one. So I grabbed it and promptly packed it in my suitcase. Guys, I am telling you, if this book is not a win for me, I am going to be gutted, beyond gutted, because look at it. Beautiful. Can you see that black on black on the spine? I am telling you, if I have to unhaul this one, I'm gonna cry until I'm sick. I realise I haven't even actually said the name of this book yet. This is Birnam Wood by Eleanor Catton. Birnam Wood is set in New Zealand, and on the wake of, I think, a major flood and earthquake, passage to a certain part of the southern islands of New Zealand is cut off. When that passage is cut off, the town of Thorndyke is essentially isolated from everything else until they can do all of the excavation works and stuff needed to open the road again. But a guerrilla gardening group, yes, you heard that right, a guerrilla gardening group, see this as an opportunity because in Thorndyke there is an abandoned farm, and that abandoned farm has already tilled soil just for miles. They go to try and take over this farm, but when they get there they discover it is not in fact completely abandoned and that a mysterious owner is already living there. He's a doomsday prepper, and he takes this event, this town being cut off and isolated, as like the hint that this doomsday event is actually happening. And so he strikes a bargain with the gardening group. They can stay, they can grow crops, but he has to get a percentage of those crops. Is this not the most batshit plot that you have ever heard in your entire life? So anyway, yeah, we know from the blurb that they agree. But after they agree, some weird things start happening, and the group start to feel spied on. So like I say, wish me luck, because look at the smudgy birds and the drone. Okay, well, off I go to start this and have another cup of tea, because I don't know, what else do you do at 3:30 in the morning?
I'm hoping that I won't get left behind. If you leave me a sign, I won't gotta think it twice. On a different planet, I still can't understand it. Never seen anything like it before. Oh, I see you when I'm sleeping. Show me what you're seeking. Up all day, we're up all night. There's no such thing as time. Oh, I know that there's a secret, something that you're keeping in disguise. When we close our eyes, there's no such thing.
That, my friends, is kind of how I feel, because I am here to bring you the not wonderful news. I think that I'm DNFing this one. In this case, I think that I am willing to admit that the problem is maybe with me and not with this book. When I first started this book, I was super hopeful, because in the space of what would be chapters if they weren't just, you know, ginormous sections, can you tell that I'm on the I like chapters bandwagon, even though I don't necessarily stop at the end of a chapter. I do like a kind of built-in way in the book to mark time passing. Anyway, in the space of what would have been like a good couple of chapters of this book, I was pretty engrossed. Eleanor Catton's writing is everything that I was promised that it would be. It's very atmospheric, it's very intricate. However, and I have said this 100 times to you guys, beautiful writing is not usually enough to get a book across the line for me. And although this one definitely kind of hints that an intricate plot may happen at some point in the future, at the place that we're at, like, where did I get to? 63 pages in, we've only just come to the place where they are going to do this guerrilla farming, which is not a vibe that I'm into right now. And this is why I'm kind of in two minds about this one, because I'm like, at some point in the future, would future Leanne maybe be in the mood for a book like this and pick this back up? Or realistically, is future Leanne more likely to be at a place in her reading life where she's even less tolerant of things taking ages to get to the point? And I honestly don't know, and that's kind of really bothering me, because fundamentally I don't want to give up on books that I already have in my library if there is a chance that I will come back to them in the future. And unlike my 60% Diaries series, I haven't really set any rules for this one, except that I need to try and read more TBR veterans. But it's funny, because even as I'm saying that, if it sits on your TBR for longer and becomes even more of a TBR veteran, then you're even less likely to pick it up in the future. I think if I'm completely honest with myself, this one is going to have to be a DNF and an unhaul. I am gutted about the fact that this entire vlog has just been DNF'd. What were the chances that I was going to pick 4 completely different TBR veterans and that not a single one of them was going to work for me in any way? Insanity. Good. Gagged. Hurt in my soul. But my friends, regardless, that is it for this vlog. If you have made it this far through the video, then leave me a box emoji down below for all of the books that are going to get packed into a box to leave my house at the end of this video, including this absolute freaking stunner, which I have now found out since picking up is also signed. As always, if you have read any of the books that I've talked about here today and you have different opinions than me, or maybe you have the same opinions, maybe you also hated or nothing these books, then please tell me about that down below. And of course, if you have any books that you could recommend to me based on these that I might actually like, then please, as always, leave that in the comments too. If you are new here and you would like to see how I get on with episode 2 of reading my TBR veterans, then please hit that subscribe button. And if you are one of my frequent viewers who has come to the end of this vlog also crying with the sadness of it all, then please hit that like button so that something actually good comes out of all of this, because the like button really does help my channel. And I will speak to you guys again really soon. Bye!